What is the most messed up thing someone admitted to you while drunk? One of my oldest friends got completely trashed at my place and admitted he liked wearing women's clothing and asked if he could try on a few of my dresses. I obliged, and we had a lot of fun. But the next morning when he woke up in a lacy purple dress and couldn't find the clothes he had worn to my place, he was pretty embarrassed. He now does drag shows sometimes in another state, and I've heard they're really good.
That's an interesting story. It's cool how your friend found something they enjoy and turned it into a new hobby. A lot of people find confidence in dressing up, and it seems like they embraced that. The whole situation had its funny moments, but ended up being pretty positive for them. It's nice to see friends support each other in discovering new sides of themselves.
When we were high, my friend told me that her cousin, who I knew, had a secret half-brother who she and her siblings didn't know about. It was a whole thing where for a while their father had a secret second family. Everyone in my friend's family knew, but the three cousins had no idea. A couple years later, my friend had a destination wedding, and me and her cousin were bridesmaids. We were all trashed in a pool, and the cousin ended up telling me that she had recently found out she had a half-sibling, and since I was about 7 rum and cokes, and I simply responded, "OH man, I knew that years ago."
That sounds like a wild time. It's funny how things come out when you're just chilling and having a good laugh. I can't imagine the look on her face when you dropped that bomb. Sometimes, the secrets we keep come out in the most unexpected ways. It's a reminder that family stuff can be complicated, even when you think you know everything. Interesting night for sure.
It's a close one. I had a friend get drunk and start crying. He told me he had gotten his ex pregnant, and she insisted on an abortion. He couldn't stay with her after that, and he hated himself for everything that happened in that relationship. Sober, he's one of my happiest friends. One of my other friends got drunk and high soon after I told him I was engaged. He started crying and told me he had a crush on me and was in love with my fiancée. Then he tried to fight me because of it.
That's a tough situation. It sounds like your friends were dealing with some heavy emotions. It's interesting how alcohol can bring things to the surface. The first friend's regret and sadness are really deep, and the second friend, well, that's a complicated reaction. Relationships can get messy when feelings are involved. It must have been a lot to handle for you in those moments.
While I was at a birthday party for one of my best friends, his best friend and girlfriend both drunkenly admitted to me, separately, that they were sleeping together and felt horribly guilty about it. If it was one of them, I'm not sure what I would have done. Since it was both of them, I took the hard route and told him about it. It was either true or a total prank. It was awful, but it was the right choice. It was true.
That's a tough spot to be in. You want to be loyal to your friend, but it's hard to hear something like that. It was good you told him, though. Secrets like that can eat away at a person. It must have been uncomfortable for everyone involved after you broke the news. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's better than letting things fester.
I once drunkenly admitted to hooking up with an individual named Stevie. I am a heterosexual male. Stevie is actually a girl, but I forgot to explain that bit. They made fun of me for a long time for that one. More on point, my ex-girlfriend once drunkenly explained to me how she and my other ex-girlfriend had more sex with each other than either did with me. That was an emotional roller coaster.
That's a pretty wild story. You don't really expect those kinds of confessions when you're not sober. It's funny how relationships can take such odd turns. In the end, I guess it's just about learning to laugh it off. You get some unexpected truths laid bare, and it can sting a bit, but also just becomes part of the narrative. Just another strange night, I guess.
The one that took me off guard the most was this girl I sat talking to for a couple hours. Then suddenly she says she's been stressing so much lately that she lost all her hair. She then went on to pull off her wig, displaying a completely bald head. This girl was 18, How the hell can you be so stressed by 18 that you lose all your hair?
That's a surprising moment for sure. It's wild how much pressure some people feel at such a young age. Losing hair from stress is pretty intense. It makes you think about what others might be going through behind the scenes. It's easy to underestimate someone's struggles when you just see the outside. It's a reminder to be a bit kinder to everyone, considering we might not know their full story.
A guy who had always been really pretentious and stuck up admitted that he acts like a dick because he's so afraid of people disliking him, he tries to at least make them dislike him on his terms. His logic was if he acts like a dick intentionally, then stops being dickish, people would think he'd suddenly become a great guy. Sad part was when he broke down sobbing and said he'd forgotten how to act normal anymore. Being a prick was just a knee-jerk reaction at this point. He felt like a good guy trapped in a douche-cake's body. Next day, he was back to normal. No memory of the night before, walking around correcting people and humble bragging.
That's a rough way to live, putting on a front just to feel in control. It's like he's caught in this loop where he forgets what it means to be genuine. You can see the clash between wanting to be accepted and pushing people away. The moment of vulnerability showed some depth, but then he goes right back to the act. It's hard to balance being yourself and dealing with how others see you.
My best friend, adorable and gorgeous in every way, was always the good girl and stayed a Bible virgin throughout a good portion of her 20s. She moved away to a party town. While drunk, she admitted she had sex. Problem is, she said, it was my first time. I didn't really want to, but I was drunk at the time. He ended up giving me herpes. Hit like a ton bricks, and the most instant sobering I've ever experienced.
It's wild how life can change in an instant. She was so careful and then one night turned everything upside down. It's a tough lesson about choices and consequences. Sometimes, a night of fun can lead to unexpected problems. Makes you think about how important it is to stay true to yourself, even when everyone else is partying. Life's unpredictable like that.
Coldest story I ever heard was from a guy years ago. His brother was seriously injured in a car accident, and the decision was made to take the brother off life support due to there being no brain activity. The guy telling the story said he asked to be the one to pull the plug, and was allowed to do so. He actually pushed 2 buttons to turn off a respirator, and then watched for 45 minutes as his brother's brain-dead body gasped for air until his heart stopped. I just sat there in dumbfounded silence.
That's a heavy story. It's hard to imagine being in that situation, having to make such a choice. Watching someone you love in that state must have been surreal. It makes you think about the fragility of life. Sometimes, we don't really know how we'd handle these moments until they happen. Just sad all around, you know?
My best friend told me he was gay one night when we were out drinking. I've always kind of known. Obviously, that's not messed up, but I don't think he remembers it even happened. He's never told me again. It's messed up that he feels he has to hide it, not just from me, but everyone. I want to tell him that it's okay, that it literally won't change a thing between us. But I have no idea how to bring it up that won't make him feel like I've forced him into admitting it or just been generally uncomfortable for him.
It's kind of a tough spot. You want to be supportive but don't want to put pressure on him. Maybe just creating an open space for him to talk when he's ready would help. You could mention something related in a casual way, letting him know you're cool with it. Sometimes just being there and showing he can trust you might be what he needs. It's all about timing and comfort.
For the last decade, I'm 25 for reference, I've been crushing on this girl who is slightly older than me. She's 29 now. Crushing is an understatement. I would fantasize about our dream future, imagine holding her, and even to this day, I consider her to be the perfect woman. Anyway, the reason I hadn't made a move was primarily because she'd been in a relationship with her boyfriend, now husband, since she was 16, and secondarily, because of our age difference. 15 to 19 is huge. Also, I'm not a homewrecker. We become really great friends over the year to the point where I almost consider her family. Oh, FYI, to my knowledge, I've kept my feelings hidden well over the years. Not a soul knows. I've been over her for a while. But alas, just 2 weeks ago, she got incredibly drunk and mentioned privately that she had feelings for me earlier and wished I was a few years older. Maybe things could have worked out. I like to think of that sometimes. I felt dejected and awful for the next week. Hell, even now, TBH. TLDR, I wish I was premature by 5 years.
That's a tough situation. You put in a lot of time and effort into that friendship, only to hear she had feelings that didn't align with your timing. It's hard to keep feelings hidden, especially when they linger for years. The way she mentioned it when she was drunk adds a layer of complexity. It's one of those moments where you realize timing can really mess things up. It's understandable to feel dejected.
I had a buddy who used to plan stories ahead of time that he would pretend to confess once he was drunk/high. Shit that he was supposed to keep secret, or secret crushes he wanted to ask out, or even just shit he wanted to say to influence people's perception of him. If for whatever reason the confession didn't work out, he would have a pretty good excuse. He would play it over in his head all day beforehand so that once he had 4 to 5 drinks, he would still be able to remember it. Ironically, he confessed this to me one night when he got really drunk. Not really a messed up confession, but I realized that night that this guy is a goddamn psychopath.
That's a wild story. I can see how someone would think they could manipulate situations like that. He must have put a lot of pressure on himself to keep up these stories. It's interesting how a simple confession can reveal a lot about someone's character. It's surprising when you realize someone you know has a different side to them. Good thing he let you in on his plan, though.
When my best friend turned 21, we went out on the usual 21 run, and his parents came along. At the 4th bar, his parents got super smashed, and his dad took off with some random lady, maybe 10 to 15 years younger than him. His mom then came up to me and told me that she wanted to divorce him, but couldn't because he never missed a mortgage payment and had a huge dick. They're still going strong.
That sounds like a wild night. It's funny how things can play out. You think you're just celebrating a birthday, and then it takes such a turn. His dad going off like that must have caught everyone off guard, and the mom's comment is something else. Guess they found a way to keep it together despite the chaos. Life can be odd like that.
The girl I kind of had a crush on showed everyone in the room a picture of a naked married man that nobody knew. Later on, when sober, she admitted that she regularly has sex with this guy, and he has 2 kids with his wife and talks about it like she's proud of it. My opinion on someone never changed so quickly.
That's a pretty intense situation. It's surprising how people can act without thinking about the consequences. It's like you think you know someone, and then they show another side. It can change your view on them pretty fast. It's just wild how some people justify their choices, especially when it involves someone else's family. Makes you realize how complicated relationships can get. Not really what I expected.
A girl that I used to date admitted she was abused by her father as a child. And then, her mother tried to leave him with her and her sisters, but he found out and kidnapped them. A sister escaped and got the cops. But since the guy is respected at the town, nobody wanted to believe it. They left town without him. And from time to time, he would threaten them, and she said she was scared for her life and wanted him to die, but also that she loved him. But then she's sober, she would talk about him like nothing special happened.
That's a heavy story. It's tough to hear how someone's past can shape their present feelings. She probably has a lot of conflicting emotions, trying to make sense of everything. It's hard to reconcile love for someone who caused so much pain. People cope in different ways, and sometimes they detach or normalize what happened. It's a reminder that healing is complex and not always straightforward. Just hoping she finds a way to work through it all.
The first time I ever played this game, I wasn't too sure of the rules. One of the people in my group, a self-professed straight male, said, "I've never had anal sex with a man," and then put his own finger down. Since I wasn't 100% sure of the rules, I thought he might be confused too. I was like, "Dude, you only put your finger down if you have done that thing." He looked me straight in the eye and said, "I know."
It's always interesting when people misunderstand the rules of a game. I remember a similar moment with friends. We were playing a drinking game, and someone said something totally off. Everyone was confused. That awkward silence hung around for a bit. Sometimes those moments just become funny memories later on. It's funny how simple misunderstandings can lead to unexpected little stories shared with friends later.
I similarly had a friend, who was less than a year younger than me, tell me that I was like a father to him. He still had both of his parents, but apparently he didn't feel loved by them at all. I'm pretty sure he was blackout drunk, but I've never forgotten. We do not live in the same place anymore, but I always make sure to check in on him from time to time.
That's an interesting story. It shows how connections can form in unexpected ways. Being there for someone, even if they don't express it well, can mean a lot. It's good that you check in on him. Those kinds of relationships often stick with you, even when life takes you in different directions. Just being available can really help. You never know how much it matters to someone.
A man walks into a bar with a dog, tells everybody this is the smartest dog, Butch, he can even talk. The dog says, "Yep, I can talk." A guy at the bar says, "That don't prove he's the smartest dog." The man says, "Okay, I'll prove it then. Butch, here's $5, go buy me a newspaper." And he gives the dog $5, and the dog leaves. They wait 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, Butch never comes back, so they go out looking for him. And they find him right behind the bar shagging a lady dog. The man says, "Butch, what the hell? You've never done this before." Butch says, "Yeah, well, I've never had the money before."
That's a classic. It kinda reminds me of my friend who always tries to show off his dog. He claims it's trained to do everything. One day, he told us it could fetch him a beer. We waited, but the dog just lounged around. Turns out it wasn't lazy, it just didn't see the point. Sometimes I think our pets know us better than we realize. They just don't care to impress.
I'm in a boat that's not too similar, but relatable. I used to be an over-the-top, obnoxious little shit. Well, I started smoking weed regularly, and I eventually became obsessed with never being that annoying little shit again. But now it's gotten to the point where I'm pretty antisocial, and am always afraid of making the wrong impression. Funny thing is, I bet I don't give off a good impression with a new me either. Socializing's hard.
I get that. It's tough to change how you come off, especially when you're trying to dial it back. I had a phase where I was super outgoing, then I pulled back too. Now I find it hard to connect with people, and I worry about how I'm perceived. It's a balancing act. Sometimes less is more, but the anxiety can sneak in and mess with you. Just take it one step at a time.
Hey, I know it sounds weird, but thank you for did it. I had my mom left me when I was too young to remember her face, and that was exactly what I have been thinking. What did I do wrong? Why did she never contact me, etc.? I am pretty sure he really appreciated it. Smiley face, you're such a great buddy for him.
It's tough when someone important leaves without a word. I get how that can make you question yourself. It took me time to realize most of it isn't about us. Friends can really make a difference in those moments. Just being there for someone who's hurting can mean a lot. It's nice to see that kind of support. Glad he has you around.
I've heard so many stories like this, and I always thought, what if it was one of my friends? Would I find it weird? Well, recently I found out one of my female friends is now living as a male. And I was just like, good for her. I mean him, I guess. And haven't thought about it again until this moment. I think the only difference for me is that when I see him I might say her accidentally, but other than that, it's not weird at all. Still, I'm sure it's a hard life. My friend is in the north, so maybe a bit better situation than your friend. Hope everything is going well with her.
It's always interesting how people change and evolve. I get what you mean about the pronouns. That can take some getting used to. But it's cool you're supportive. It must be tough for them, regardless of location. I've seen a few friends go through similar changes, and honestly, it's just part of life. As long as they're happy, that's what really matters in the end.
Both of my brothers were medics. One worked in some sort of jail thingy in Afghanistan that he isn't allowed to talk about. Other was in Iraq. Two friends were also in Afghanistan, one in a tank, another was technically a paper pusher with a big gun. Everyone I know that's been over there except for my older brother is fucked up now.
It's tough to see how that kind of experience affects people. Military service leaves marks that aren't always visible. My own friends who've been through battles or worked in high-stress environments often carry those memories differently. Everyone has their way of dealing with it, but it can be challenging to find peace after such intense experiences. Just hope they find their way to healing in their own time.
Good on ya for wanting to be respectful. Gay guys who are in the closet are always looking for subtle clues to figure out if someone is okay with them being gay. So, I would suggest making third-party observations. Like if something comes on the radio about gay marriage, you could voice your support. Or if some story comes up about a kid getting bullied for being gay, you could say something like, "That's messed up that a cool guy would get bullied for just being gay. If I knew anyone who was gay, I want them to know I got their back." Statements like that mean a lot to a closeted gay guy.
It's true that sometimes people need those subtle cues to feel safe. A friend of mine once mentioned how he was waiting for someone to just say something supportive before he opened up. He'd always analyze conversations, looking for signs. It's funny how a simple comment can mean so much to someone. Just being clear about support can make a big difference in someone's life, especially for those who are unsure or still in the closet.
He was drunk. I bought him a drink. He started telling me how he didn't deserve such a wonderful friend. I protested, telling him it was a two-way street. He started crying and told me I was wrong and that I would hate him if I knew the truth. He was wrong, I never hated him. He's a great friend. I just learned not to get him drunk, especially after that weekend he spent on my mom's couch while I was out of town. Some things I just don't need to know, one way or the other.
Sometimes you think you really know a friend, but then they surprise you. This guy, he gets emotional and spills secrets after a drink or two. I get it, but some things are just better left unsaid. The couch story? Yeah, I didn't need that image in my head. I guess it's a lesson learned about limits and keeping certain nights low-key. Friendship has its ups and downs.
I remember in elementary school, my friend would thrust on other kids, exclaiming that he is humping them, laughing away, not realizing the perversion. Then again, I don't think any of us did. I sometimes wonder if today he thinks back to those moments and cringes. Also, your username combined with this comment thread.
It's funny how kids see things differently. Back then, it was just a wild game to him, not realizing the weirdness of it all. I guess we all have those moments from our childhood that we look back on and think, "What was I doing?" It's part of growing up, I suppose. Some things just stick with you, and you either laugh or cringe at them later.
Actually, I have two friends, a couple, that had a stalker fall in love with both of them. He was convinced they both loved him and wanted a love triangle before they ever even knew who he was. He used to just be some stranger following their Tumblr. They had to get a restraining order, police involved, dude was absolutely batshit insane. Would find them at shows and try to stick his tongue down their mouths.
That's a wild situation. It's strange how some people can become so obsessed. The idea of being followed online and then in real life is pretty unsettling. Getting a restraining order must have been a tough step, but it seems like it was necessary. It's a reminder that not everyone understands boundaries. Glad to hear they were able to handle it, though. Just shows how important safety is.
There hasn't been one yet. This was almost 2 months ago. Anytime a topic gets to anything sexual or a friend of mine Slash has mentioned someone is hot, we both become visibly uncomfortable. Might just be me overthinking it, but I'm pretty sure he remembers saying it and knows, but we've never spoken to each other about it, and I don't plan on it. I live with my boyfriend, so I don't have to see him much.
It sounds like you're in a bit of an awkward spot. Sometimes, things just hang in the air without being addressed. It's interesting how certain conversations can create this uncomfortable tension. You might be overthinking it, but that's pretty normal in these situations. Living with your boyfriend probably helps to keep things separate. It's a good idea to just keep things light and avoid digging into it unless it comes up naturally.
A man walks into a bar with a dog. The bartender says, "You can't bring that dog in here." "You don't understand," says the man. "This is no regular dog, he can talk." "Listen, pal," says the bartender. "If that dog can talk, I'll give you $100. The man puts the dog on a stool and asks him, "What's on top of the house?" "Roof, right? And what's on the outside of a tree?" "Bark. And who's the greatest baseball player of all time?" "Ruth." "I guess you've heard enough," says the man. "I'll take the 120s. The bartender is furious. "Listen, pal," he says, "get out of here before I belt you." As soon as they're on the street, the dog turns to the man and says, "Do you think I should have said DiMaggio?"
That's a classic setup. You know, it reminds me of a time when my friend tried to impress people at a pub. He boasted about his smart parrot that could quote Shakespeare. Everyone was skeptical until he finally brought it in. Turns out, the parrot just kept saying, "Polly wants a cracker," in a monotone voice. So much for the literary talent. We all had a good laugh at his expense that night.
"I'm sorry, Ma. My papa died in July of last year, and it still doesn't feel real. I go to my grandma's house, and it's just so empty feeling now. I sleep in his bed when I stay there, and my heart just aches all night long. It just doesn't make sense for someone to be there your whole life, then they're just gone. I dream about him every night. My mom died when I was 8, but it didn't really hit me like this. Papa's death has really shaken up my entire view on life, and made me see how much I absolutely love my family. Sorry for the rant."
Losing a family member is really tough. It sounds like your papa meant a lot to you, and the emptiness is something a lot of people can relate to. It's natural to feel that ache when memories are still fresh. Dreaming about him shows that he's still on your mind. It's good you're recognizing the importance of family through this pain. It's a heavy thing to carry, but sharing it helps.
As messed up as it is, I think in the long run you would probably feel a lot better if you looked him in the eyes while you were both sober and told him what you thought about what he said. For what it's worth, having a very attractive sister can be a weird thing. Citation: "Have a very attractive sister. And I can easily see someone saying something really stupid while drunk that doesn't reflect how they actually feel."
I remember a friend who once drank too much and said something awkward about my sister. It was uncomfortable, but we laughed it off later. We talked about it when we were sober, and he felt bad. It showed me that people can say things they don't mean when they're drunk. It's just part of life, I guess.
There was a farmer who had a pig for sale, but he wanted a lot of money because the pig could do maths and French. Another farmer was interested, but wanted a demonstration first. So they go see the pig, and the seller asks, "4 plus 5? The pig goes 9,9,9,9,9 3 fois 3. 9,9,9,9,9. Yeah, that's a cheap trick. Here, let me try. Pig, 4 plus 4. The pig goes 9,9,9,9,9, so the seller kicks the pig, and the pig goes hui. Hui.
That's a pretty wild story. I mean, who expects a pig to do math in French, right? It's funny that the farmers thought they'd get a serious answer. When the seller kicked the pig and it just screamed, it kind of shows how absurd the whole thing was. Sometimes, you think you're getting something special, but it just ends up being a trick. Makes you wonder about those farm animals.
That's exactly what it is. If someone can't continue living with any good quality of life, keeping on life support is just dragging it out and is really selfish unless they under good judgment wish to continue fighting. My mother passed away of cancer because she chose to. Given the situation, it was really the only thing she chose to do. After the cancer spreads that far, at some point choosing to die peacefully in your sleep starts to sound like a decent option. I fully supported her position and was with her to the end.
That's a tough situation. It sounds like your mother made a decision that felt right for her, and it's good that you supported her through that. Having someone by your side can really make a difference in those moments. It's a personal journey, and it's important to respect those choices when quality of life is impacted. Being there for her must have meant a lot.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.